Harbin, the capital city of Heilongjiang Province in northeastern China, has seen a rapid increase of the CCP virus patients. After 18 local officials were held accountable and received punishments for their incompetence in handling the epidemic, all local officials were terrified and added pressure to the lower ranks to impose more strict epidemic control measures. Miss Lin works at the canteen of the hospital. Although she tested negative in the nucleic acid for the CCP virus, she has been under quarantine inside the hospital for 8 days. Her husband, Mr. Xiao, being a close contact, was also placed under quarantine. He too has tested negative for the virus. Xiao is being quarantined at home, and the door was sealed by the authorities.
I have no symptoms. I don't have a fever, and my nucleic acid test was negative.
Where is your wife now?
My wife is under quarantine at the People's Hospital.
How many days has your wife been under quarantine?
7 or 8 days. I lost track.
Is it true that all her colleagues are under quarantine and cannot go home?
Yes, after the quarantine at the hospital, they will self-quarantine at home. The nucleic acid tests are all negative. The epidemic control team in Harbin has tightened control measures. Presently, they would rather keep hundreds of uninfected in quarantine than missing a single infected patient. That's how it is.
Did they seal your door? Are you able to go out for grocery shopping?
The door is sealed.
How did they seal it? Do you live in a high-rise or a bungalow?
Bungalow.
How did they seal a bungalow then?
They locked the door from outside, so I cannot go out.
How do you get your daily necessities, such as shopping for food?
My daughter helped me buy food. I talk to her on the phone regularly. My daughter does not need to quarantine. She is married. She lives in another place.
But your door is locked from outside. How does your daughter pass the food to you?
She cannot get into the house. She passes the food to me through a window. Speaking of this, you may interview the government officials and ask them why they adopt such measures. We citizens don't have any rights. We have to obey the orders from the government. That is why we often say Chinese people don't have any human rights.
Exactly. No human rights. Your community staff should have made arrangements to buy food for you.
They often advocate that socialism is good. But when people in socialist countries are having difficulties, who would care about you? No one. If the epidemic control team orders you to self-quarantine at home, you obey and self-quarantine. If they demand that you cannot go out, you have to stay inside all the time. If they ask you to quarantine with other people staying in the same room, you have to obey. We citizens are not allowed to speak out, nor are we allowed to have our own choices. You know what I mean?
You said your wife's test result is negative and she does not have any symptoms, correct?
No symptoms at all. She is just an employee of the hospital. Her nucleic acid test came out negative and a CT scan of the lungs is normal. The only thing is that her serum test had some issues, which may indicate some health problems. Many say that Harbin is the second Wuhan. Everyone in Harbin is in a state of panic. Even if my door is not sealed, I cannot go out either. Other people will look at me as if I am the super spreader of the virus. They will all feel afraid of me. Can you imagine?
Must be very tough for you.
Of course, it's a tough situation. Now we don't want to go out either, because we will encounter discrimination. Others would think, you must be dangerous. Otherwise, why would the government lock you inside? So they are scared of you, and they will stay away from you.
More outrageously, Mr. Ning, whose job is to purchase food for the hospital canteen and hasn't had any contact with any other employees, is also forced to quarantine. Ning goes to a wholesale market to buy food in the early morning before 4 a.m. He would drop the food at the canteen before 7 a.m. and then go home. The other canteen employees go to work at 8 a.m. Ning had no contact with any of them, but he was still required to undergo the quarantine and to the strictest level. He and his family were locked inside their residence by an electric security door.
So you were allowed to self-quarantine at home. Your nucleic acid test, CT scan, and serum test all came out normal, right?
Yes, all test results indicate I am not infected. Actually, I am the purchase delivery guy for the canteen. I do not enter the inside of the canteen at all. Ms. Lin is a chef working in the kitchen. After I unloaded the stuff behind the canteen, I can go home right away. So usually I don't have any contact with Miss Lin as I don't get inside the kitchen. I am neither a confirmed patient nor a suspected patient. I don't have any contact history with confirmed or suspected patients either. I usually go to the wholesale market after 3 a.m. during the early morning to purchase food, and I don't do it every day. The food I buy each time can last several days. I usually finish my work before 7 a.m. after I unload the food. I then go home and rest. The other employees start working at 8 a.m. Why do they quarantine me as I do not come into contact with any of the other employees? I don't get to see any of them. I was forced to quarantine simply because I am also one of the employees at the canteen.
As a result, even some residents who might not be virus carriers nor have had any contact with someone who's infected would also have to be locked inside their residence. The interview was conducted on April 22nd by Xiaohua Gu of the Chinese-language Epoch Times.